Lane Kiffin thinks that Ole Miss has a really elite ceiling, and we talk about what else we learned on Saturday.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're talking about Ole Miss's dominant 52-13 win over the Georgia Southern Eagles. It's a non-conference slate that has been a real eye-opener for head coach Lane Kiffin, and he has noticed the potential of this team. He said the path is there for the Rebels to be really elite with performances like this, and it's easy to see why. Kiffin, a coach who has seen national title teams at USC and Alabama, knows what it takes. So whenever he starts talking like this, pay attention. If the Rebels can maintain this standard consistently, the sky is the limit for the squad. The ingredients are all there, as Kiffin says. And don't forget to check out our second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC and Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They offer more perspectives on college football and the SEC. Vandy almost got Missouri this weekend. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. 67,500. A stadium record was at the Ole Miss Georgia Southern game. Georgia Southern. So Game Time may be an avenue for you moving forward. Now, after Ole Miss dispatched of the Georgia Southern Eagles, the media gathering happened there, and all the media people started basically asking Lane Kiffin all of the standard boilerplate questions. If you've seen one press conference, you've seen it all. Nobody asked anything original. They asked the same stuff over and over again. But occasionally you get an answer that is at least a little bit eye-opening. And Ole Miss got that, and we got that this weekend after the game because somebody asked Lane Kiffin what this non-conference slate has shown him.
The biggest thing you've learned about your team through these first four non-conference games, last four?
I think they have a chance to be really elite, and they have a chance to be really special. Now, there's a lot of variables in that. I said at first they were a really good roster. Now they've started to show they're a really good team at times in spurts. But, I mean, you look at the size of the linemen, the way the backs run, obviously Jackson's play. Then you look at these receivers. We know the defensive front, how special that is. Again, they're going to have to be consistent. They're going to have to play way harder teams and in way harder places to play and overcome adversity. But, it's like I've said before, like if you go hunting, which I don't do much of, but let's go fishing. Keith does hunting. Let's go fishing, man. You go out on like a big, nice fishing yacht and like you got really nice fishing tackle, and you go out there and then you got like really live bait, so you feel good about going out. Or you can have like little rods and frozen shrimp. That's how sometimes as a coach you feel like going out there to play. So at least we know we have the right bait and the right rods and the right boat. So let's get them on the right fish and play together, and we could be special.
Yeah, that is an unbelievable analogy that Lane Kiffin offered up himself. And it was a dominant game. It was one of those things that Ole Miss looked bored during large stretches of the game against Georgia Southern, the same way they did against Wake Forest. But when you look down, this is what the box score looked like. Ole Miss ended up winning the game 52-13. The touchdown was scored on a trick play. Ole Miss got tricked more than they got beat, essentially, for Georgia Southern's touchdown. But Georgia Southern only had 17 first downs, 6 of those off of penalty, by the way. But we'll talk about that as we move forward in the keys against Kentucky and all that. Only 37 yards rushing, and after 3 quarters, they had 0. So a lot of that came against the backups. 157 yards passing, which, again, a lot happened on that last drive as well. And total offense had less than 200 yards, 2 turnovers, including an interception that was done with pressure from Princely Amon Mielen, picked off by Brandon Turnage. And J.J. Pegues recovered a fumble on Georgia Southern's first offensive play. It was an absolute domination. If you look at these numbers, there's no way that you can come away from with a different idea. So Lane Kiffin talking about this team and how elite it could be, it makes sense. We've seen it. We've seen the spurts to where the defense looks absolutely dominant. And you look down, it's like everything. You had 37 carries for 37 yards. Every team that Ole Miss has played has had a stat line similar to that. They're giving up about 35 yards per game on the ground through 4. That's a third of the season. Offensively, there's 1 and 2 play drives where they just absolutely gash the defense. And they look unstoppable with weapons like Juice Wells and Trey Harris. And Jaxson Dart looks like absolutely the best football player in the country. It makes sense that that is where Lane Kiffin is seeing and acknowledging where the ceiling can be. Now, a lot of this could be psychology on Lane's part. A lot of it could be, it's like, hey, you want to get to this next level and everything, stay focused and stay with me because it's there for you. Everybody can see that. And Lane Kiffin historically has not been a coach that has been prone to compliments overly against his team or against the fans or all of that. Both the fans and the teams got compliments this week because 67,500 for Georgia Southern. That's nuts. I do think Ole Miss is going to have over 70,000 for Georgia at this point. I do think that's absolutely going to happen. Ole Miss getting hard sellouts. We are at the point where it can happen. But a lot of that has to do with how elite this team could be. And Lane Kiffin acknowledging it publicly, how elite this team could be. I do not care about AP rankings right now. I do not care about coaches poll rankings right now. I care about what this team can be from week to week. You have a situation to where you want to look at it. These were my predictions from July. My overly homerish predictions in July is WWW all the way through. This team, everybody knew could be good, but nobody really knew how good. You always had the probability of like, hey, this could be a national championship level team, but they could also have been a 9-3 level team. If Oklahoma would have been a little bit different because they don't look particularly good right now. LSU struggled with the UCLA team that got absolutely housed by Indiana. South Carolina is good. And Lane Kiffin in the press conference talked about how teams that everybody wrote off before the season turned out to be a pretty decent team. That happens every single year. It looks like this year, South Carolina is one of those teams. And it looks like Arkansas is one of those teams. Ole Miss plays both of those teams on the road. And Ole Miss does all right at Williams-Brice. But in Fayetteville, that's at the very least tricky. Now, that could be just the fact that the Auburn Tigers are an absolute dumpster fire right now, but it is what it is. Ole Miss has a chance to be elite, like number 1 in the country, national championship, super elite. And Lane Kiffin saying that. He was a coach on the staff of the USC dynasty back in the early 2000s with Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, and Lindell White, Pete Carroll, all of those guys. Steve Sarkisian was on the staff as well. And he was on the staff at Alabama in the middle of the 20 teens. So he saw what that dynasty looked like. And he recruited a lot of the later 20 teens players like that wide receiving core and and all of that. Lane Kiffin went out and got them as well. The point is he knows what this looks like. He knows what a super elite team looks like and how it's supposed to be. And whenever he talks just matter-of-factly, like, he's like, yeah, I think this team can be really elite. And it just matter-of-factly saying that, you should pay attention to that. Because Lane Kiffin is not one to throw out compliments willy-nilly. He's just not. But he is a person that will talk whenever he has the reason to talk about something. Whenever he gets confident, he will say it. Whenever he believes it wholeheartedly, he will say it. He will not just say it just to say it. Everybody should pay attention to the fact that Lane Kiffin is already volunteering that information, even if he's asked a question. Because if he's doing that, this team has probably got some improving that they're going to do over the next few weeks. And by November, they're going to be absolute hell. And if that happens, if the 2008 Ole Miss team appears at the end of this season to where at the end of the year they were simply just unbeatable, you have a national championship level team. It's all about peaking at the right time, and they're getting better and better and better. And that is great news for Ole Miss fans. It's just simple as that. Princely Amamielin lived up to the hype Saturday, dominating the field and proving why he is the player everybody has been raving about until now. You won't want to miss us talking about this. Chris Paul, the Ole Miss defense as a whole, coming up next. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, by the way. It's the place to bet which side of Ole Miss being an 18.5-point favorite over the Kentucky Wildcats in Saturday's stripeout game, or the over-under right now, which is at 51.5. Ole Miss would have covered going over that 51.5 number in 3 of the 4 games they played by themselves. That's just something to keep an eye on. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view the latest live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place the bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. So Princely Amamielin has gotten better and better and better over the beginning of the season. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Princely Amamielin is learning a new system under the Pete Golding. I mean, he did the Florida thing a year ago. And another thing has to do is he's recovering from a post-spring surgery on a labrum. So he's getting a little bit healthier as this game goes on. But there was a couple of pass rushes in this game where Princely Amamielin was just unblockable. Just the bend and the quickness that he was able to get around the corner. The tackle had no chance. He couldn't even get into his pass set to block Princely Amamielin because Amamielin was by him already. He is somebody that has gotten better and better and better as this season has gone on. Over the course of the year, he's got 8 tackles. He's got 3 tackles for loss, and he has 2 sacks. Those numbers may not overly jump off the page, but they've gotten better and better and better. And this isn't a situation where this is happening or that's happening or what's going on. No, I think this is just him getting comfortable in the defense type situation, because Princely Amamielin famously would be texting Pete Golding at 10 o'clock at night with questions about the defense moving into the season. This is a fairly complex defense for a defense that relies on transfer players. Transfers generally require a defense to be simple, but this defense is a little bit more complex, so Princely Amamielin is putting in the work for that. Another player that has come on game by game this season is Chris Paul. He's leading the team in tackles right now, I believe, with 29. He's got 6 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback carries, and 2 sacks. He plays with violence. Absolutely plays with violence. And that is fantastic to see what he could do. He is somebody that has played sideline to sideline. He's gotten to the point where he's doing some of the stuff that I have not seen in probably 15 to 20 years from the linebacker position, because he's able to go sideline to sideline like a track man, but also headhunt a little bit. Chris Paul playing fantastic. Now, he does have the tendency to get penalized from time to time because of his aggressiveness. I am not going to tell an aggressive player to play less aggressive. I'm just not going to do that, because the worst thing you can do is take that aggression out, because they generally become much worse players. So you just hope they can get smarter. Maybe they pull off. Maybe they do a little bit something else in that like split second. But his aggression and the way he's playing linebacker, and with TJ Daugherty providing what he provides on the other side, and with the other players in Ole Miss's front 7, Chris Paul is the perfect player to play behind somebody like Walter Nolan and JJ McGee's and those players on the line of scrimmage. That's the reason teams just have so much trouble running on this offense, whether it's Furman or Wake Forest or, Middle Tennessee or Georgia Southern. Running on this Ole Miss defense has been at best problematic. And I don't think at this point a team this season has broke 50 yards against Ole Miss's run defense. That is what it looks like. And you play the schedule that you play. And just so everybody knows, that I know the thing about it is, just so Ole Miss fans can realize what's happening. Because if Ole Miss was 4-0 with a tough schedule, they would say, quit bragging, don't talk about it, we don't hear about it. When Ole Miss is 4-0 against cupcakes, oh, don't talk about it, we don't want to hear about it, those are cupcakes. Every team plays essentially the same schedule every year, except for LSU, who almost lost to both teams from Los Angeles, but 2 Power 5 programs. That's at best problematic for a school. But most everybody plays this version of the schedule, okay? A Power 4 conference school, 2 G5s that are regionally based in your region, and an FCS school. Everybody plays that over the course of 12 games. Everybody is, I guess, upset because of the way the schedule has been laid out, but everybody's going to get their FCS games, their G5 games, and that's the way this works out. So whether Ole Miss is 4-0 or 0-4, other teams' fan bases are going to poo-poo everything that Ole Miss is doing because they simply don't want to hear about it. And AP voters are going to play a sense of self-importance and being the smartest person in the room by moving teams up and down each single week, even though Ole Miss has outscored opponents 220-22. That's a 198-point spread over 4 games. That is a record that has never been done in the Southeastern Conference. Think about what the Southeastern Conference teams have done. That spread has never happened. And when you look at the fact that Jaxson Dart is the number 1 passing quarterback in all of college football right now, he's thrown for over 1,500 yards through 4 games. He's on pace to throw for somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,800 yards if he just keeps those numbers. Now, if it goes up, which it can, he has a chance to really do some damage. But we're talking about touchdowns. He's on pace for 36 touchdowns. The passing touchdown record, I think, is 31 in the season. He's on pace for the season touchdown mark as we sit right now. Look at Jaxson Dart's numbers. What's going on? He is 95 for 119. That is 81%. He's still over 80% completion through 4 games, 1,554 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. That's absolutely incredible. And he's on pace to break just about every record at Ole Miss. And we thought that he was going to have trouble getting to the touchdown record. And the touchdown record was just going to be like kind of a bridge too far because I think he needed like 41 touchdown passes in the season to catch Eli Manning at there. Well, he's on pace for 36 or 37 touchdowns right now as we sit at this moment. So if he has a couple of good games to where that spread goes up a little bit, all of a sudden that record becomes in reach as well. I'm just saying that he is getting to statue level land if he can keep this up throughout this season. Absolutely important. So what we learned against Georgia Southern, Ole Miss has the best offense in school history, and that's not even close, but they might have the best defense in school history too. And those two together are salty. Princely Amamielin is starting to look like himself. He's looking like a game wrecker on the outside. Forced a turnover for the first time this season, a pass to Brandon Turnage. And Jaxson Dart needs to average 278 yards passing to pass Eli Manning as the passing leader. That's in the regular season by the Egg Bowl. With 278 yards passing, he would be able to pass Eli Manning. Now, right now, he's averaging about 380 yards per game, nearly 400 yards passing per game. To put that in perspective, for the longest time, Archie Manning was the single game passing leader at Ole Miss with 436 yards. In that famed 1969 game against Alabama, he threw for 436 yards. And that stood the test of time for like 40 years. Eli didn't catch that record. Nobody could catch that record. And it was finally broken, I think, by Chad Kelly, maybe like in 2015-ish, in that ballpark. Well, Jaxson Dart is averaging right now 380. So just 50 yards short of what was once an unbreakable record. Jaxson Dart is averaging that amount. And he needs to average 100 yards less than that to break the career passing record. Absolutely impressive, absolutely unbelievable. And the 220 to 22 scoring differential is absolutely nuts. That's like 1984 Nebraska scoring differential numbers. It's fantastic. Up next on Locked On Ole Miss, we break down the Ole Miss versus Kentucky matchup a little bit, and we dive into the Week 5 SEC betting lines. It's a smaller week because teams are starting to take their bye weeks, but there's some very interesting games. Stick around for that, for all the insights coming up next. You know, Game Time is the place to get your Ole Miss tickets. Literally, it might be the only place to get your Ole Miss tickets right now. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. Listen, there's not a bad seat in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, but it does offer you views from each seats before you buy the ticket, so you know exactly what you're walking into. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc. They take the guesswork, and Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. And with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I might be able to help you out with those tickets as well. They got 67,500 in the stadium for Georgia Southern. This is a stadium with a listed capacity of 64,038 seats. I think they're going to hit 70,000 this season. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen this season. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your tickets. Again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So this is an interesting week for Ole Miss fans because this is the SEC opener for Ole Miss. This is the stripe out week, either powder or red. Look on your tickets for where you are and see the corresponding color that you're asking you to wear. And if you need that color, check out College Corner in Oxford, Mississippi. They'll be able to help you out. We'll be able to tell you about that later on in the week as well. 67.5 is the attendance record. I fully expect them to break 68 in this Kentucky game. And by the time Ole Miss plays Oklahoma and Georgia, and they're really peaking on what's going on, there's going to be a mighty big crowd in that stadium. Speaking of that game, Ole Miss is an 18.5-point favorite against Kentucky. The Wildcats are somewhat offensively challenged, but Mark Stoops always has a good defense, and Ole Miss's offense against Kentucky's defense is going to be one to see. The over-under right now has me absolutely – I have no idea what to do with that, but the over-under is at 51.5 points for the game. So what they're saying by the over-under being that and the spread being what it is, they expect Ole Miss to win this game somewhere in the neighborhood of 35-17. Or 35-21, maybe. I don't know. Somewhere in there. That's what they're thinking this game is going to be, and that should be interesting as well. Like I said, this week's games in the SEC, there's not many of them. There's only 6. But there's some interesting games that we can look at. We talked about Ole Miss being an 18.5-point favorite this season. Kentucky has been a little bit offensively challenged, but Brock Vandegrift is a good quarterback. He was a 5-star that went to Georgia. He was a good player, but this season, Kentucky has not been the juggernaut on offense that we expect. But on defense, they've been good. They held Georgia to 13 points. They've made it very difficult on the lower level competition that they have faced. The only time they struggled was at home against South Carolina for whatever reason. But Kentucky has a chance to really muck up this football game. And with Ole Miss kind of going 3 and out quickly, if Kentucky can get some first downs, it could be a little bit problematic. See the Missouri-Vanderbilt game for a blueprint of what this game could become. That's all I'm going to say about that. I do not think that's going to happen. I'm going to tell you that that's an option. Oklahoma is a 2.5-point favorite on the road at Auburn. Auburn's quarterback situation is absolutely putrid right now. There's no other way around that. There is nothing you can do about that. Auburn's quarterback situation is very bad. Walker White is going to end up playing quarterback at Auburn at a certain point this year. Oklahoma, they benched Jackson Arnold for the backup quarterback as well. This might be the worst quarterback game in Power 4 this year. That's Oklahoma at Jordan-Hare, the first SEC road game for the Sooners, and their first trip probably down to Auburn as well. Mississippi State is at Texas. Texas is a 37.5-point favorite at home against Mississippi State. You heard me correct. Texas is a 37.5-point favorite over Mississippi State. They did not look very good. They made Florida's offense look like the second coming of the Kansas City Chiefs. And we all know what Florida's offense has been like previous to this. Mississippi State struggling, and Mississippi State's quarterback got knocked out for the year. So we're going to be dealing with a young quarterback on top of everything else. This advantaged Texas in this situation. In a game where right now I think the wrong team is favored. Arkansas and Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a 5.5-point favorite. I think the wrong team is favored in that game. I think Arkansas is good enough to score some points. Taylor Green is basically the second coming of Matt Jones. It's just modern football where there's a lot of Matt Jones now, and there's not the surprise that it was, but he's that long striding running back. He makes plays out of the pocket, all of that stuff. We all know what Arkansas can do with players like that. Texas A&M has been very mid to start this season. We joke about Texas 8-4 all the time. That might be more real than we realize. Georgia is a 2.5-point favorite on the road at Alabama. It says versus, but it's at Alabama. And Alabama being a home dog would scare the heck out of me betting against them. Alabama has done a really good job historically defending their home field. And now that I think everybody's banking on the fact that since Nick Saban's gone, Georgia's going to be able to handle Kalen DeBoer a little bit easier, and maybe their offensive funks, they're going to wake up out of that. This is going to be a great game. I cannot wait to watch this football game. I'm glad Ole Miss is playing at 11 o'clock in the morning so I can pay attention to this game. It's going to be an absolute war. And last but not least, South Alabama at LSU. LSU is a 19.5-point favorite. And then let me tell you, I am done taking LSU to cover for the rest of this year. I have been burned every single week thinking that they're going to be able to score. They're going to figure some stuff out, and they're going to have to deal with a South Alabama team that has scored about 130 points over the last two games against the worst defense that I have ever seen. I think South Carolina is going to be able to take that 19.5-point live and make it work as well. Really interesting stuff. I'm pretty fired up about that game as well. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link for Locked On College Football down in the description. You don't even have to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider, the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. Our texting program sends you notifications on anything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college football sports coverage. We're currently adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is down in the description as well. For those of you watching on YouTube, we're going to send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Howdy toddy, everyone.